Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. I'm the maestro, Jeremy Karp, alongside Hollywood James Knox, a man with a better strike zone than anyone you would find at a Blue Jays game.
Oh boy, that's a good one, Jimmy. That's a real good one to start out with. Better than Laz Diaz, apparently.
Especially after last night.
Man.
How you doing, James?
Well, I'm doing great. And as we were sitting here off air, kind of pull up the curtain, we were talking about Nolan Gorman and Juan Soto all being tied together, and Gorman just hit a home run.
I think he heard, yeah. So one quick, before we go through some of the rundown of what we're going to talk about tonight, yeah, it had just come out from Jeff Jones of the Belleville News-Democrat that Nolan Gorman is talked about in the potential trade with Juan Soto, with the Washington Nationals and the Cardinals, and Nolan Gorman has been listed as one of the players. Well, I guess he heard about that, and so he had to hit a home run to tell the team not to trade him.
That or it boosts his trade stock, right?
I was gonna say maybe now, like they realize now he's got to get, they got to get something more out of him. So, but yes, folks, there is so much we have to talk about tonight. Yes, we're going to delve into the latest rumblings about Juan Soto being traded away and where he potentially might go. So far, the Cardinals are listed as the top team by a lot of sources and news media outlets. And we're also going to be talking about the XFL getting relaunched and St. Louis. Dome field advantage, baby. Look at that right there. It's beautiful.
That's right. Cacaw is law.
Cacaw is still the law in the Gateway City. So we're going to talk about that as well. And more importantly, Los Angeles doesn't have a team, so suck it, Kroenke. And we're going to be talking about Vince McMahon in something I never, ever thought I would see. He retired, like, from WWE. And I never thought I'd see the day. I'm going to be honest with you. It is something that absolutely blows my mind, James. It really does.
Perhaps it's better to resign and just take with, stay while you're ahead. And because they obviously, if anybody's been following the news, he's been kind of under investigation by numerous law firms and states and the SEC, not the football conference.
I was gonna say, that would be more interesting if it was actually from the football conference. But
yeah, I'm kind of with you. I didn't expect it either. And I was worried how it was going to change everything. And I'm sure we'll get into this later in the show with, his son-in-law, Triple H, and with Stephanie running the show now. But I watched Monday Night Raw, and I thought from the very get-go that you could already that Triple H was back driving the bus because, it seemed like it was nonstop chaos from the get-go. And that's what really pulls in viewers. We didn't have these long, drawn-out interviews that we had become accustomed to seeing. It was like from the get-go, you've got The Miz and Logan Paul getting ready to, beat it.
Don't
beat
even
the spot out of each other. So
started on that.
But yeah, we've got and actually, my nephew's going to SummerSlam. I'm actually kind of jealous. I had the opportunity to go, but of course, where I spend my weekends and
I don't know what to say.
But he's got I don't know. I think I've spent enough time out in the heat. I think I'll just enjoy it from my recliner.
I think a lot of us have spent more than enough time out in the heat. I tell you. Well, no, it's interesting. Up here in Missouri, we went from having 110 degrees to literally yesterday we had
having to swim to your mailbox to get your mail.
Exactly. We had a foot of rain. We had 12 inches of rain. And some places had even more. Some places did have less. But either that, I get calls from my friends and saying that their basement's flooded. And I'm just like, oh, my gosh. So, yeah, not exactly the best week weather-wise.
You think Battlehawks can swim?
I'm pretty sure they just have to fly over the water.
Goodness.
So before we get to the XFL, yes, let's kick it off with what we were already talking about, and that's Vince McMahon and his retirement from WWE. So we had mentioned this earlier this week that in the past few weeks, there's been a lot of controversies back behind the scenes about Vince McMahon paying hush money that's now well over $10 million in hidden money, whether it's to cover up affairs and just a bunch of behind-the-scenes off-screen incidents. And now it just got to the point where he said out in a tweet that, he's 77, it's his time to step down, and he thanked everybody in the WWE universe for everything. And it's a sad way for this to end. If it really is the end of Vince McMahon in WWE or in professional wrestling in general, it's a sad way for it to end because, first off, it's not the first controversy he's had to entail in his life.
Right.
Like, he had the famous steroid trials back in 1994, which almost completely doomed the WWF at the time. And, there was so many things that went on between sexual allegations with people within his organization, and that led to him having to make appearances on shows like Phil Donahue back in the early 90s. And so now these allegations come out, and it's just like Vince McMahon is a pioneer of professional wrestling. What we watch on Mondays, Fridays, and even Wednesdays with AEW, none of it would exist if it were not for Vince McMahon. And, what I'm worried about, and I want your thoughts on it, will what he's done behind the scenes be overshadow what he's accomplished in the industry?
Well, Jeremy, it hasn't so far. You go back to the steroid trials of '94. You go back to the sexual harassment lawsuit that Sable, now Brock Lesnar's wife, filed against Vince. You look at the stuff with the rumblings of his affair with Tammy Sitch, who was Sonny. And it never overshadowed his legacy as a trailblazer in the sport of professional wrestling, or now sports entertainment. Right. But at some point in time, no matter how strong of a jaw you have, sooner or later, somebody's going to land a punch that's going to knock you out. And I think that this may be it, because I honestly do not believe that Vince McMahon was ready to retire or resign, or however you want to look at it, from his post at WWE. So I would hope it doesn't. But at some point in time, you have to take away the businessman and the on-screen villain to those like Stone Cold Steve Austin or Mick Foley or even Shawn Michaels in D-Generation X. You have to take away and look at the human being as his own entity. And I hope that because he's done so much for so many people and being a trailblazer in the industry, that it doesn't. I just wonder at this point, what does his wife Linda think? She was obviously part of the business for a long time, and they got into politics. Obviously there's rumblings that his relationship with his son Shane is bad. And I wonder about how much all of that ties in with his nefarious actions, if true, because these are all allegations, nothing's been proven.
Right. This is true.
That, how much all of that ties in with that stuff.
Yeah. And he and Linda McMahon have had a long and, from what we can tell, a happy marriage. Although, like I said, now a lot of more back behind the scenes stuff has come out. Some people say they've been separated for a while now. Others say that Vince had the affair and, like Linda didn't know about it or whatnot. And just all kinds of things have gone on. And you brought up the great point that it hasn't overshadowed it so far. But as we've seen so often in wrestling, you see it in every sport, you see it in everything in everyday life, but especially in professional wrestling, how often controversies overshadow accomplishments.
Right.
But in my opinion, Vince McMahon has the biggest accomplishment of all. He pioneered the industry.
Right.
Like that right there. Don't get me wrong. I think the territorial days were great times. I would have loved to have been around when it was just a bunch of different promotions in different areas, especially here being in St. Louis. I'd get to go to Kiel and watch wrestling at the Chase. I would have enjoyed the hell out of that. But Vince wanted to make it a lot bigger. He wanted to make it worldwide. He wanted to expand it. And look at what he's done. Don't get me wrong. He has done plenty of things that are not things I agree with, like within WWE. One of them is them holding pay-per-views in Saudi Arabia. I think, I do consider it blood money. I think WWE should not be holding shows in Saudi Arabia, given the amounts of civil rights issues that Saudi Arabia has, and among so many other things. And it's just a crazy situation that I know there's going to be so many more developments about it in the coming weeks. And yes, he is under federal investigation right now. But at the end of the day, we'll just see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of all we can do. I'm sitting here thinking about, the steroid trial and stuff like that, but also thinking about that interview that he had with Bob Costas and how inflammatory that was. Yeah, I mean, like I said, at some point in time, everything catches up with you. I mean, and this is one of those situations where, unfortunately, it has. The great thing is like you look at the two people that are running the business now, and Triple H and Stephanie, and I think that they'll point it back in the right direction. Matter of fact, I would expect things to get better. When Triple H took over NXT, which was at that point in time a developmental, type brand, Triple H brought it into what it was. Now, of course, they rebranded it once he stepped away and everything else, and it kind of went downhill. But that's really all we can do is wait and see. It'll be interesting because you're right. There will be more developments that come out of this.
Absolutely. And continuing on with that, you mentioned that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan have taken over in different capacities. Triple H is the head of creative, and from what reports have said, morale is high. Yeah, morale is high backstage. Everybody who seemed to have issues with Vince McMahon in a certain capacity that made it uncomfortable for them to work there are really excited to see Stephanie and Triple H. Triple H has held a meeting with all the wrestlers and talent in the locker room, and he made it clear with them that he wants to make this a more fun place to work. And that's the type of leadership you need. I think there's something to be said. Like I said, of all the praises I gave Vince, there's something to be said when you have a script for a show. Is that a Cardinals game update?
Yeah, Pujols just hit a 3-run home run.
Oh, wow. All right. Albert Pujols, I believe that's number 686?
I believe so, yes.
All right.
His seventh of the year, yeah.
Seventh of the year. We're at number 686 for Albert Pujols.
439 feet, come off the bat at 108 miles per hour.
Oh, my God. Well, that is encouraging news right there. See, this is what happens. It's now 6-1 Cardinals in the top of the fifth inning.
Whew, boy, did he crush that ball.
And see, this is exactly why James is the insider. He keeps us posted. So this is what's best about live shows.
Right. So you never know what you're going to get.
You never know what you're going to get. You can't get this crap on pre-record.
Wasn't it? Remember last week it was Goldie in the All-Star game.
Exactly. I remember that. And what's the best part is he's the only one that did shit in the All-Star game for the National League.
Yeah, that was
so whether it's defensively or at the plate. But anyway, yeah, morale is high backstage in WWE. And because in the past with Vince McMahon, creative would have the script all written, and literally maybe a half hour before the show, Vince would hate it and just tear it up.
Yep.
And
he was notorious for doing that to Paul Heyman too. And Paul Heyman is one of the better creative minds in all of wrestling, no matter
Paul
what.
Heyman to me is a wrestling genius. Paul Heyman is to me top 5 manager all time. I think the only knock I have against Paul Heyman is just, the financial things with him. But as far as booking goes, he's phenomenal. Talking on the mic, one of the all-time best. I mean,
Agreed.
like I said, Paul Heyman is somebody else you could consider a pioneer in wrestling. But, you know, everybody has their flaws. Everybody has their flaws in professional wrestling, so or in anything for that matter. So, but yeah, in fact, I think a great example was back. We're gonna turn the clock back to 2006, December to Dismember, and it was the only ECW only branded pay-per-view. And, you know, Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon had a lot of disagreements about it, especially about the booking. You know, he felt that CM Punk should have gone over a lot more than he did. Vince had other ideas about it, and we all know how Vince feels about CM Punk. And what ends up happening is after the pay-per-view, which was a disaster, it had less than 100,000 pay-per-view buys.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the lowest bought WWE pay-per-view until the WWE Network had come into fruition in 2014. Right. But anyway, after that, basically, Vince McMahon fired Paul Heyman.
Yep.
Like, he sent him home on a different plane, like, and everything. And, you know, that's the thing. For as influential and innovative as Vince McMahon is, there's just a lot of old school problems with him that made it hard for him to work with so many others, even ones within his own family.
Yep.
But now Triple H is in charge of creative with Stephanie and Nick Khan at the head of basically the table. I guess the only thing you can say is hopefully Kevin Dunn is next.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if there's any right-hand man for Vince McMahon who can cause just as much issues backstage, it's been Kevin Dunn.
Right.
And a lot of people had trouble working with him.
Well, it's the idea of, like, you know, you cut the head off the snake, the rest of the snake dies. And that's kind of what you have to do here. You have to turn the page. And you know, I think what happened was the talent and the new entertainers that you were bringing in outgrew the ideas of somebody who wanted. It's not that Vince was necessarily using old school ideas. He just wanted his mentality and way of thinking doesn't work anymore. It's really outdated. It's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And, you know, it's no secret that that's the case, but I'm excited for what's to come with WWE. I know they've recently actually gone back to TV 14 rating after being TV PG for so many years, which look, to me, the only reason it happened was because of a lot of to do with two things to me. With what happened with Chris Benoit tragedy, you know, that's why they banned chair shots to the head and things like that. So it's totally understandable. But also a lot of this PG, family-friendly content came from Linda McMahon running for Senate.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going to go. So yeah.
So, and people will try to say, oh, no, that's not the case. It's the case. It is most definitely the case.
Right.
There is no coincidence in the matter which is still ironic because even when they did their whole Be a Star campaign, they were still bullying the heck out of a lot of their employees on camera, namely Jim Ross, you know, who've probably gotten bullied, unfortunately, more than most when he's literally the GOAT commentator. But yeah, we'll see what happens with WWE from here on out now that Vince is as they say, retired. And, you know, the next generation of commands are taking the helm.
Yep, he gone.
So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. For those that are first tuning in to Roundabout Sports, I'm the maestro, Jeremy Karp, alongside Hollywood James Knox. The St. Louis Cardinals are up 6-1 on the Toronto Blue Jays, as Albert Pujols, as James pointed out, hit a 3-run shot. This is 686th home run of his career. Earlier today, the Kansas City Royals, who were coming off the heels of a pretty good win streak lately, fell to the Los Angeles Angels 4-0. Brad Keller had himself another rough start, unfortunately. But there's a lot to be excited about with the Royals, and a lot of people are going to be like, why? They're 39-59. I'm excited because of the young bats in the lineup. I personally feel like if the Royals just get some more solid pitching. In fact, this is the first thing. For those that don't know, the manager of the Royals is Mike Matheny. Now, if you're in St. Louis, you know pretty darn well what Mike Matheny as a manager is like. But I think the bigger issue is the pitching coach, Cal Eldred. And this is not a personal knock against him as a guy. You would be hard-pressed to find a game where a boneheaded pitching decision is not made because of Cal Eldred. And, whether it's putting the wrong reliever in at the wrong time, obviously Matheny does make the final decision on these things, but you can just see it. The starters have trouble going deep into innings. Here's something for you. You're almost at 100 games into the season. The Royals have only had 6 shutouts all season. They've only pitched 6 shutouts. One of the lowest in totals in all of baseball. And in a division that has a lot of young bats in their lineups, namely on the Guardians and the Twins, and on the White Sox even. Honestly, everybody besides the Tigers, and even a couple on Detroit. You need solid pitching. And here's another thing. Kansas City's about to go, I believe, for a 3 or 4 game set against the New York Yankees.
Yep.
If you don't have pitching and you're going against the best team in baseball right now, it's going to be disastrous because there's not a more feared lineup in baseball than the Yankees. As a Cardinal fan, I can say that.
Well, it's a 4-gamer starting tomorrow night in New York rather. And yeah, so tomorrow night for the Royals, it's Brady Singer against Jamison Taillon as well. And you're talking about, Singer's a good young righty. He can go out and, he throws hard, go out and command the strike zone, but he's 4-3 with a 3.82, and he's facing Jamison Taillon for the Yankees, who's 10-2.
Yeah.
So, they've got their work cut out for them over the next 4 days.
Now, in their rotation, they got 2 lefties, Daniel Lynch, who's on the IL, who's on the 15-day IL, and then you got Chris Bubic. And This is the thing. Bubic is about 2-7 on the year, or at least 2-6.
He's 2-6 with a 5.53 earned run average.
Right. Now, half of that is his fault. The other half is his/Cal Eldred's fault. The other half is just I watched some of the games when he had pitched, and the Royals did not give him solid run support. And you and I both know what it's like seeing a pitcher not get enough run support when they have a good outing.
See Miles Michaelis.
Yes. Oh, wait, what's that? We're getting a call from Adam Wainwright as well. He wants to chime in on that.
He's actually happy he's gotten 6 runs of run support tonight.
Yeah, exactly. The 2 best pitchers on the, believe it or not, in my opinion, on the rotation have been Zach Greinke, who's making his comeback with the Royals, and Brady Singer. That's honest. And Daniel Lynch has been doing really well also, but like I said, he's injured, so it doesn't do you much good. That you also have who also is on the IL, 25-year-old Jonathan Heasley, but Heasley right now is 1-5 with a 5.50 ERA.
Well, the funny thing is out of all the starters you named, Brady Singer actually is the only one that has a winning record. At 4-3, and he's the only one that has an earned run average under 4, and that's at 3.82. I mean, and I remember earlier this year the Cardinals faced Chris Bubic at Kauffman Stadium, and they lit him up in the first inning. Matter of fact, he gave up 5 runs in the first inning, and Matheny pulled him, brought out the hook and took him out of the game. But Bubic has an electric arm. His problem is while he throws strikes, he's in the strike zone too much. And when he is in the strike zone, he's middle or middle into right-handed hitters. And as a left-handed pitcher, you can't live there. You've got to live on the outside corner. You've got to be able to, move the ball up and down and stay in the zone. But to right-handed hitters, you've got to stay on the outside corner. And then the lefties, you've got to hope you've got a slider or a good breaking ball that can get them to chase. And Bubic, a couple years ago had a really good season, but since then, and this may be the Cal Eldred effect. Honestly, he's gotten worse gradually over the last couple years.
Yeah, it's just been a decline. And then, if your starters don't get going, then your bullpen can't get going. And here's some examples. Jake Brentz. Yeah. I'm not even kidding when I'm about to tell you this, because probably the only person I can think of that has a worse ERA than him is Albert Pujols. Jake Brentz literally is 0-3 this year with a 23.63 ERA.
Yikes.
That is where he's at right now. Amir Garrett, who to me is one of the better bullpen relievers, 24 years old. He has a winning record. He struggled this year, though. He's 2-1, but he has a 5.68 ERA in 32 appearances. Dylan Coleman, once again, he and Taylor Clark are two of the better pitchers in the rotation. Clark has a 3.83 ERA and Coleman's a 2.90. Coleman probably has the lowest ERA on the whole team.
Right.
Go ahead, James.
I was to say, reliever-wise, I'm really a big fan of Josh Stallman. He throws hard. He's got electric stuff. He's got good movement on his pitches. You hate to see a bullpen piece like that wasted. On a team that Mike Matheny uses his bullpen like Dusty Baker did, and you can't burn out arms and expect to keep going back to them. Look, he did that here in St. Louis too with Seth Maness and Kevin Segrist. You end up burning those guys out. You're going to them over and over and over again. And look, to his defense, on some of those teams, that's all you had. I mean, it's similar to last year with Schilt and having to go to Gallegos and Cabrera and those guys over and over and over again. But Stallman's one of those guys that if I'm in contention and I'm looking for a young electric arm out of the bullpen, I'm picking up the phone and I'm making a phone call to Kansas City.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up as well, because with the whole using up of the bullpen very fast, Kevin Segrist and Seth Maness, and even another one for me, Matt Bowman. I was about to say Mitchell Boggs. Boggs, definitely no. Matt Bowman to me.
Boggs fell off the map. Bowman, you're right on.
Yeah, Matt Bowman was a very, very solid reliever. Dependable, durable, until you used him about 80 games a year. Kevin Segrist, I remember at one point, went over half the season. He made over 81 appearances in a season.
Yep.
Relievers are not meant to do that. The most I think appearances a pitcher on the Royals has made is 32.
Right.
On the year. I know Stomont has pitched in 33 games, so probably 33 right there. But no, I'm telling you, that's why you have a bullpen of multiple different relievers.
Right.
For the reason of some people getting rest and others, they go out there a little more. But you do not wear out the arms, because then you're really up shit creek without a paddle.
Well, and I think Ollie's done that a good job with the Cardinals. Is Ryan Helsley is the perfect example here, because there's been numerous games where I thought Helsley should have gone another inning, or that's who I would have made the phone call to instead of Gallegos or a Cabrera, or got Drew Verhagen or whoever the hell else you want to call out of the bullpen. And I think Ollie's done that, and he goes to his guys like, hey, can you go another inning? And Helsley will tell him no. Although it's hard for me as a pitcher, if I've got bullets still in the gun, I'm going to, give me the ball and let me go out there and throw, especially in some of these games where the bullpen is blown games for the Cardinals. But you're right. And you talk about the rotation not getting, through X amount of innings and then having to go to the bullpen and blowing your bullpen. Unfortunately, that's happening to the Cardinals, and it's happened to the Cardinals all year. And I know we'll get into Cardinal trades and who they should trade for coming up, but that's when – and look, if I'm Mo, I may pick up the phone and call across the state and be like, hey, is Josh Stallman on the market?
That could very well happen. I know there's a lot of pitchers that have been talked about intra-division-wise, and like I said, we'll save this for a little bit more when we get to the Cardinals. But, there's players on the Reds and the Pirates who a lot of people feel that the Cardinals should trade for. But once again, it's intra-divisional. That's when it all is. That's a very complicated situation. But here's something. The lowest ERA in Major League Baseball is the Los Angeles Dodgers at 2.98. Meanwhile, you have the Kansas City Royals with the fourth highest at 4.69.
And that's not terrible.
No, well, I mean, the worst in baseball, the only ones that are the Royals are better than as far as the ERA goes is the Rockies, Nationals, and Reds. Reds have the worst at 5.17.
Yet the Cardinals can't figure out how to score runs on them.
Right. Well, exactly. Well, that's why it's not like 7.6 or something.
Right.
The Cardinals do rank 11th at 3.89. But anyway, you look at the amount of shutouts, and Royals once again bottom half of the league. Saves bottom half in the league. It's just pitching, and then even one thing they also struggle with, and the Cardinals struggle with this as well. In fact, this is interesting. The Cardinals are just above the Royals in this, and the Royals rank 28th in the league.
What?
Strikeouts, pitching strikeouts.
That's okay.
The Royals have thrown 714 strikeouts.
Okay.
The Cardinals 719. So it's not even like it's like a far distance. They're right there, neck and neck, to see who's the worst strikeout team as far as pitching goes. And just recently, the Royals were able to get a game where they struck out about 10 plus batters, which was, I actually believe that was a Zach Greinke start.
Come on, Jeremy. You watch Bull Durham. You know what Crash Davis said. Strikeouts are fascist.
Oh, my God.
Pitch to contact, right, Meat?
Yeah, there you go.
Don't think, just throw.
And then one more stat they're out there for the Royals with their pitching situation. They have the third worst average allowed. They've allowed a total average of 265. Wow. Only ahead of once again, the Nationals, who are at 268, and then the Rockies, who are at 273. Which, okay, I'm going to give a little benefit of the doubt because, I mean, it's not that hard to hit in Colorado.
Yeah, I was going to say you play in a ballpark where they initially used the humidor to keep the balls from flying out of the place. So
exactly. So it's kind of expected, but nevertheless, Kauffman Stadium is pretty flat, so There's no excuse for that one.
Right.
That being said, I love the lineup Kansas City has. Even with Salvi being out for weeks on over a month now, and he's working his way. He's in rehab, working his way back. But I like MJ Melendez. It's interesting because you never see a catcher leading off in a lineup, but MJ Melendez is, and it's fun to watch. Obviously, Bobby Witt Jr. is having a really spectacular rookie year. Ryan O'Hearn delivers when he's put into the lineup. Whit Merrifield has been the topic of conversation. The only reason, originally he had a consecutive game streak of well over 800 games, consecutive games played streak. And the only reason it happened was, it was a toe injury, but the day after that was when they went to Toronto, and he would have been on the unvaccinated list. Yeah. So one way or another, it would have ended. But and then you have, and James, I'm sure you'll be better pronouncing his last name than I will. I believe Andrew Benintendi.
You said it. You nailed it.
I nailed it. Okay, sweet. The top trade bait on Kansas City right now. He has hit well over 400 since the All-Star break.
Yep.
And he's only 28 years old. He's hit 321 this year. And, he's got 39 RBIs, stolen 4 bases, which, in an era that doesn't really steal base anymore, that's pretty solid if you ask me. So if I'm Kansas City, I'm going to use some of these bats that are producing in the lineup to maybe look at getting a pitcher as well. Both Missouri teams need pitching. And obviously it's not so much, oh, I need it more than you. No, it's just both you guys need pitching, both the Cardinals and the Royals. Kansas City is in more of I wouldn't even go with a rebuild. I would go with it as, because they actually had a really good draft. Looking at the prospects they had one of the best drafts in baseball this year. But looking at where the Royals are at, it's not even as much as a rebuild as in we got some key pieces. We just need to get the other half taken care of. You got the hitting aspect. You got the young guns on the hitting taken care of. Now you just got to get some young arms, rally around, the leadership of Greinke, get Daniel Lynch healthy, and then go out there. Because honestly, the American League Central is not the toughest division in baseball.
No.
It's a division that is yours for the taking if you're just able to fully compete for it. Right. So that's where I think the Royals stand right now. And also, Cal Eldred needs to go. That's the other big step because he just lacks that true leadership that a pitching coach needs. Look at how, I'd even put, obviously to me, look at a Dave Duncan. Dave Duncan is the pinnacle of pitching coaches because, he's a bona fide leader. He commands respect and, he works with your weaknesses and help build your strengths.
Right. And I was going to say I would think that Cal Eldred would have those same, or at least some of those same characteristics, when it comes to his, how he performed as a pitching coach. And because he pitched under Dave Duncan in St. Louis. I mean, he was on his teams, and you would think that would have been some of the, I guess, personality traits, if you will, that he would have taken from Dave, when it came to, going forward as a pitching coach. And I think that's one of the reasons that Matheny brought him in, was thinking that Eldred would be able to lead his pitching staff. And unfortunately, we've seen that the results have not been there.
Right. And it's interesting you bring up, but see, and I think the biggest issue with Cal Eldred's leadership and his pitching managing comes with the middle relievers, the ones when you get to the 6th and the 7th and the 8th.
The bridge guys.
The ones that transition to Scott Barlow, the closer. Right. They have – it's nearly a 6 ERA when you're going to the 7th to the 8th. At one point in the beginning of the month, it was about a 5.88 ERA. And, there was a game I remember. The Royals were up 6-0. It was I think July 5th actually. The Royals were up 6-0 on the Angels. The Angels came back and won 7-6.
Wow. Yeah, you're not going to win many games giving up that many runs, especially if it's your bullpen.
Right, and that's the thing. It was a bullpen. It was a very solid start from I forget who was the starter on that day, but it was a very solid start. And I also feel like there's not much accountability that's in that pitching room. I feel like there's not a whole lot of accountability reflected on the coach in this matter. Because there is talent there. There is talent in that bullpen, but you just have to figure out the right way to work with them.
I'm wondering if it's like, if you could compare it to the St. Louis Cardinals and Jeff Albert as their hitting coach. You've got a ton of talent in the lineup, but you see guys that are every night going 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 or 1 for 5 or 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts and a pop out or something like that, where that in the veterans, you're not going to change what the veterans do. There's a reason why, Arenado and Goldie and those guys are perennial, all-stars and MVP candidates. But you don't have that. You can't relate to the younger talent to help them bring their offense along. And I think that may be here with Eldred and the pitching staff, especially the bullpen staff in Kansas City. He may be so old school when it comes to his mentality that relating and being able to work with the younger talent coming up through the system, especially whether it's in Omaha they're just coming up or the guys that were already there, that he's just not being able to relate to them, to find their sweet spot, to really bring out their potential.
Absolutely. So we'll see how the rest of the second half plays out for Kansas City. I mean, it's interesting because they've won almost as many games this month Oh, I'm sorry. They won almost as many home games this month. They were 8-4 at home, I believe, in the month of July, and obviously, then they won total games in May. In May, they finished with a total record of 9-20. That includes home and road. So obviously, there is some slow progress. Obviously, you're not going to expect them to compete for anything anytime soon. This season's basically done. You're just looking for some positives. You're looking for positives as far as talent, not so much wins and losses. Right. If that makes any sense in the matter.
Well, and it does. I think what you're doing now is a lot of these guys are playing for a job next year, or in the case of somebody like an Andrew Benintendi or a Whit Merrifield, they may be kind of auditioning for, a possible trade or another team. Let's not forget that, we sit here tonight, you go exactly a week from tonight, the trade deadline's come and gone. The trade deadline is next Tuesday, August 2nd at 5 p.m. Central. So when we do our show next week, we're going to be sitting here going, okay, so the Cardinals got this person, or the Royals got this person, or the Royals, got rid of this person, or vice versa. And I think if you're a Royals fan or if you're a Royals player, especially if you're looking at trading maybe a Benintendi or somebody else, it's like, what can you get back for those players? Especially with Benintendi's slash line, I think is 320, 348 on base and like a 386 slug. I mean, those or something like that. Those numbers are huge, and I was always a fan of Benintendi. I wish the Cardinals would have signed him when they had the chance, because I see him as kind of a player. He's at one point in time, he was kind of like, I thought him as like a poor man's Jock Peterson, because, I mean, they both play the outfield. They both are similar defensively, but I always thought Benintendi had a little bit more pop. And we're seeing that this year, especially with the 39 RBIs. Of course, he missed some time hurt as well, but he was also the subject of some trade rumors earlier in the year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
Absolutely. And with the Royals, now we transition to the other side of I-70. That being our lovely over here somewhere, St. Louis Cardinals.
That team is so damn frustrating. That team, the team that wears red.
Right. There's the old saying, disappointed but not surprised. That's the Royals. Disappointed and expecting more is the Cardinals.
Depends on if you're talking about Mo or if you're talking about the ball club.
Mo is just a lost cause for me. Mo, oh my gosh, John Mozeliak, and we have plenty to talk about with him. I think the first thing we should start is with what they have, with who they have.
Okay.
First things first. Should Jeff Albert be let go after the season?
Well, I don't know, and here's why. Because apparently they're teaching this philosophy all the way through the minors, all the way down to single A Palm Beach. But Paul DeYoung was struggling in St. Louis. He goes down to Memphis and he's tearing the cover off the ball. He drove in 6 runs the other night. So I don't understand what the difference is or what's going on, or if these hitters are being paralyzed by too much information.
Yeah.
Or if it's the approach or what. I'm really not sure. I don't get it. And for me to say, yeah, I think you should let Jeff Albert go. I don't know who else is going to. I'm puzzled. And here's the question I'll throw back at you. This is the best way I can answer your question, is with another question. Why would hitters not do well in St. Louis, but do extremely well in Memphis if they're teaching the same philosophy in both places?
Well, here's the thing. In Memphis, just because it's the same philosophy doesn't mean it's taught by the same person.
Well, that's true.
That's how I look at it.
So is it the equivalent of your father telling you to do something and telling you repeatedly to do something, and you never change it or never work on it, but one of your teachers at school says, hey, you might want to look at doing it this way. By the way, that's the same way your father's told you how to do it. And then you finally do it and it works. Yeah,
it's kind of like that. Or even with, I think another example would be coaching. If you're when say, for example, when I played football, say one coach would tell me to do something and either I didn't understand it or, he'd tell me to do it. And then another coach, whether or not he was the head coach or a coordinator, whatever, tells you to do this exact same thing and you end up doing it. Right. I think a lot of it isn't as much the philosophy as much as who's teaching the philosophy.
Okay.
And sometimes it's the reversed. Your father or mother or anybody, would tell you how to do it the same way your teacher told you, but now you're listening.
Right.
It goes either way. And it's interesting you do ask that because I think that is what's going on in the organization, because you see these guys in Memphis absolutely crushing it.
Yeah.
You see Walker crushing. You saw before Nolan Gorman got called up, he was absolutely killing it. Look, you know what? I got a perfect example for you that might stun you. Newt Barr. Lars Newt Barr. This guy struggles when he's on the big league roster.
But in Memphis, he kills it.
In Memphis, he was one home run away from hitting a home run cycle.
I know, yeah.
And folks, put that in perspective. We're not talking about hitting just a cycle. We're talking about hitting a cycle of home runs. So the 2-run grand slam, 3-run solo. Like, he's just one off from that.
Yep, back in May. I remember that. And that's an interesting point. Lars is another one. And obviously you've seen Gorman. Gorman, we knew there were going to be some growing pains when he got to the majors. Newt Barr is a good one. Brendan Donovan has he's been the outlier because he's been good in both places. The kid Gomez, they just called up to Memphis. He hit a bomb last night that actually cleared the AutoZone Park scoreboard down in Memphis.
Wow.
They've all these like tower power guys down there, but when they come up here, they struggle. Or, if you look at Gorman, he got off to an start, and of course he has the home run tonight. But we saw it last year too. They were send guys down to work on their swing. They'd be great in Memphis. You call them back up, and all of a sudden they'd start to struggle again. So maybe the problem is Jeff Albert, and I think his contract either runs out at the end of this year or next year. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I hated to see them get rid of Buddha. I thought he was probably the best hitting coach they had. Other than maybe looking at McRae back in the 90s. But, with the veteran hitters, guys like Arenado and Goldie, like I said, Yachty even falls into that, and so does Pujols. Those guys are set in their ways. You're not gonna change their philosophy or their approach at the plate. But with these younger players that are coming up that you expect to excel in a Cardinal uniform, it may be time for a change of voice, or at least somebody else that can get in there that is maybe not as analytical. So when they break things down, you have both sides of the fence.
Absolutely. But that's not the biggest news regarding the Cardinals, is it?
Oh, no.
It could be, but there's this guy, he's about 23 years old, considered a generational talent, who's currently left-handed. He's currently on a team that sucks absolute ass right now, and that is Juan Soto on the Washington Nationals.
Is it ironic that when the Cardinals leave Toronto tonight, they actually go to Washington?
That's the best part. I could just see
walk across to the other locker room.
Well, my favorite thing would happen is if literally after one of those games, like the locker room is closed and Soto's knocking, trying to get in. They say, no, you go to that one.
Yeah.
Something along those lines of like, oh yeah, you're already on the other team. But and the difference is, unlike the Wilmer Flores thing with the Mets, Soto wants to be traded.
He's not going to start crying at shortstop, is he?
No, he's not going to start crying or anything because he actually wants to leave the Nationals, and who could blame him? So this is where we're looking at, folks, with the whole Juan Soto situation. A lot of teams have been interested in Juan Soto, and why wouldn't they? I mean, he's a World Series champion. He's only 23 years old. He's a home run derby champ. He has hit almost 130 home runs in his short career. He's only been in the league about 3 years, I believe. And, he's just the type of guy that most importantly knows how to make contact with the ball. He has a career average well over 300. And even when this is perhaps his worst year, But what's most striking about that, it is still much better than the average in baseball.
Yep.
Even though he has dropped so many points in a lot of categories, he has still succeeded or he is still well above so many others. And that's one thing that the Cardinals have looked at. And that's why I'm saying they are one of the top teams, that they're actually the top team when it comes to looking at Juan Soto. Now, he's hit, I believe, as of a week and a half ago. So this is pre-All-Star break. He had hit 292 with 117 home runs and 354 RBIs. He's two-time MLB first team. He's a multiple-time Silver Slugger Award winner. And just think about this. You already have Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt in this lineup. You got young guys like Tommy Edman, who was an all-star snub, and you can't convince me otherwise. Then you got Harrison Bader and Dylan Carlson. And you got a bunch of solid young pitchers, and then ones that just can't stay healthy, but we'll get into that later, that can help these hitters as far as maintaining the leads that this lineup can give them.
Right.
And then you got the veteran leadership, most importantly, which I think is the biggest thing, of Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina. And you got to capitalize on it now, literally.
Right, no doubt.
So here's my thing. You have the chant. The rumors have been swirling, and us at I-70 Sports Media have been keeping track of it all of the past 2 weeks now. That the Cardinals are either getting closer to acquiring him. They're the front runners. What will it take? And, it just keeps coming more and more. Well, now, we had mentioned this before the show, and we mentioned this right at the start of our show, that a key piece the Nationals would like in a trade with Juan Soto is Nolan Gorman.
Right.
Now, we also know there's no way around it. The Nationals want prospects. Yep. They want your Mason Wins. They want your Jordan Walkers. They want your Matthew Liberators. They want these guys. And we're not saying they're wrong for wanting them. These are great future stars in baseball. Right. Jordan Walker is a top 10 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. He's ranked number 7. And there's no team that has more top 100 prospects from Baseball Digest than the Cardinals. So it's only fitting that they would be the front runners.
Right.
And two of the biggest issues that fans have in regards to acquiring Juan Soto in a trade are these. Hang on.
You got it.
Number one.
I was going to say is you posted the article. Yeah, so you posted the article earlier about them wanting Nolan Gorman. I was going to say if you want to go over that real quick, kind of go over the article that you posted and stuff like that, and kind of let everybody know what exactly was detailed in that.
Yeah. So let me pull this up 1 second. All right. So, yeah, like I said, Jeff Jones of the Belleville News Democrat had said both teams have had trade talks with the Cardinals second baseman that would involve second baseman Nolan Gorman. And, other players that have been mentioned over the past are Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, Harrison Bader. Of course, we have mentioned the array of picks that are going to be taking place as well. And there's two things in all of this that a lot of fans have issues with. Number one is the fact that Juan Soto had turned down an extension with the Nationals for 15 years and $440 million. It's a pretty big extension. So people are wondering, a team that is not known to hand out those massive contracts like the Cardinals, you're wondering if you would even, make that type of move. Second, and when James returns in a bit and take care of some business, the most important thing is the pitching. as much as I would love Juan Soto on the Cardinals, as much as I know the Cardinals are automatic contenders and are perhaps the most dangerous team in the NFC, or not the NFC. See, folks, we're getting closer to training camp in the NFL, and I've got, AFC, NFC, all that on my mind. In the National League, they become automatic top contenders. And I'm not talking, hey, we got 3 wild card spots now. You guys can make one of them. No, I'm talking early World Series favorites in this. Having Soto would be phenomenal for this Cardinals team. But having a rotation with more than just 2 guys that can go 5 or more innings would be lovely too. You have and James, and I'm glad you're back because I was just we were just gonna talk about this. We talked about this earlier. I mentioned the article, the news that Jeff Jones had released. I talked about why Soto had declined the contract extension with Washington and why fans don't believe the Cardinals would even take that type of contract extension. But I was just also getting into the fact that pitching. The Cardinals need more than 2 pitchers that can go 5 or more innings, especially when one of them is 40 years old and the other is 33.
Right.
They need guys that can go, because let me tell you something. Steven Matz is probably done for the year. As much as I hope he comes back, I don't see how it goes. I don't see him coming back.
I heard somebody say that, even if he didn't have to have surgery, there could be a 6-week injury. Look, 6 weeks takes you to the middle of September. I mean, even if he comes back then, you're not going to have time to send him out on a rehab stint because AAA or the minors could be over by then. Secondly, his conditioning, he's not going to be able to go more than 3 or 4 innings because he's going to miss that much time. It's almost like resetting his season. So you look at that, and then I'm going to go circle all the way back to what you said about Soto in that contract extension. So let's say I'm 23 years old and I've got the chance to make it'd be a 23-year-old that could actually swing a bat and hit a ball 400 feet, right?
Right.
So he turns down 14 years at $440 million. All right. So I'm 23 years old. So if you trade me to the Cardinals now, I'm going to hit free agency when I'm 25. Who's to say that maybe he signs a 3-year deal, bets on himself, and then at 28 he decides to go test free agency again and really cash in? I mean, this kid has got really the world is his oyster, really, at this point. But so we had talked about this a little bit off air. Like, if I'm going to go out and get Juan, don't call me Giovanni Soto, and Patrick Corbin, if I'm going to go out and get those guys, let's package a pitcher in there, okay? And maybe I don't have to give up Jordan Walker in the deal. I'm perfectly fine with giving up Nolan Gorman. I would have been fine with giving up Carlson, honestly, until the fact that they come out today and said that Harrison Bader had another setback and he's going to miss up to the multiple weeks with this plantar fasciitis. So I would have been fine with giving up Carlson too. Now that's changed things a little bit, but because I could be happy with a Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, Juan Soto outfield until Bader got back. And then at that point in time, I guess you just kind of alternate in who's swinging the bat at the time, or you DH one of them, which, by the way, would help fix your DH issues too. So, I mean, I would be fine with trading Nolan Gorman. I'm not necessarily, keen on trading a Jordan Walker, but if it got me Juan Soto, sure. Especially if, in the next 2 years, I either make a deep run into the playoffs or win a World Series with him. But you're right. We need pitching. And the problem is there's not a high class, high tier, top tier pitcher out there unless you look at somebody like Pablo Lopez from Miami. And even then, Lopez in his last 5 outings has an ERA of close to 6. So there's not a whole lot out there. You're going to have to get creative. And look, the whole Andre Palante, Jordan Hicks experiment, it's over. You cannot do, and that's the biggest problem. Like, and I hate cutting you off on that, but I absolutely agree. The Palante thing, the bullpen start
That's what I call it. I call it the bullpen start because Palante's only going 3 innings, and then you got all the other relievers. And we talked about this when we talked about the Royals. You cannot wear out your relievers like this. We talked about this when you had mentioned how in the past Matheny had used to wear out Kevin Segrist and Matt Bowman, and Seth Maness. So you put these guys, and then you wonder why these relievers struggle during the other starts that say Wainwright or Michaelis, because you're having them pitch 2, maybe even 3 innings the night before. Yeah. And then you got Dakota Hudson who can't get to the 4th inning to save his life. And I'm trying my hardest because he's coming off Tommy John surgery. So I'm giving him a benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, you can't keep the same mistakes going hoping it'll change. Well, at some point you got to evaluate, But
the thing with Dakota Hudson is it's not even so much lengthening him out. He can't throw strikes. He has a problem throwing strikes. And I'll give tons of props to Andre Palante last night. Terrible first inning against the Blue Jays, gives up 3 runs, and he still makes it. He still at least gets you to the 4th inning, gets you to the 5th, and you hand it over to Jordan Hicks. They had a chance to win that ball game when he was in there. And then the wheels fell off. George Springer hits the grand slam, and I looked at the score and I said, "No, I'm done." Yeah, I mean, at least tonight, you're in the top of the 8th right now, and it's still 6-1. So it does look like the Cardinals are going to pull this off. But God knows we've seen this before too. We've seen Gio Gallegos come in.
Yeah, look right there, 6-4.
Well, hey, look, I was at the Cubs game last year when you had a 6-1 lead, 6-0 lead, and I get back to the hotel and I look at it and I'm like, oh hell, we lost 7-6. You got to be kidding me. But it's the same thing every year. You're burning out your bullpen. And here's the thing. The front offices, they're ridiculous. Don't go into a season doing the same damn thing you do year after year after year, and that's overestimate your pitching depth. You don't have any. You can't do that.
No, you can't. And the worst right. Well, the worst part of it is, there are guys out there who I think could succeed in a better environment. St. Louis, to me, obviously, I think the Cardinals would be a phenomenal team to be on. If I'm a baseball prospect, or even if I'm a player on another team looking to go elsewhere, there's not many teams I'd think otherwise than St. Louis for so many reasons. Number 1, toasted Ravs. Number 2, the history of the Cardinal base. It's some toasted Ravs, man. I tell you, it's bomb.
Yes, sir.
but no, also because there is this aurora of, what it's like being a baseball player in St. Louis. It gives you different energy. Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to up you there.
Well, anyway.
Right. The media is the other thing. The media doesn't hound you in St. Louis like they do in New York or LA. Somebody was talking about this the other day, talking about why baseball players go to certain cities. The same thing with hockey players. That's what it was. Talking about the Matthew Tkachuk trade that sent him to Florida instead of St. Louis because things were already crazy in St. Louis. But you're right. St. Louis is one of those places where the media doesn't hound you. You're beloved by everybody. You think about before Stan the Man died and stuff like that, how you would have Hall of Famers in and out of the clubhouse all the time. You're right. I mean, if I'm a ball player, like St. Louis is it. Matt Holliday talks about it numerous times. Jim Edmonds, guys like Brad Thompson, who, when they were done with their playing career, stayed around in St. Louis because they loved the area. It's no different than, all of these on-air personalities that I'm sure you listen to as well as I do.
Oh, yeah.
They were all former athletes that stay around the area because they love the place. And, you're right. I just wonder with Juan Soto, and this, I'm going to tie it all back in and put a nice, pretty little bow on top of it. I wonder, since Juan Soto has this Hollywood, loves the bright lights stage, if he got traded to St. Louis, if he would fall in love with the city like so many others have.
I think he would because of who's around him. Look, you got guys like Goldie, you got guys like Arenado, and then, like I said, I think one of my favorite parts of the Cardinals this season to watch, the relationship between Albert Pujols and Juan Yepez.
Yep.
That has been one of the best things, and I think Albert Pujols can have that, because when Pujols and Molina retire, they're going to still be with the organization in some way.
Right.
Like they did not like Pujols did not come back to St. Louis just to say, "Hey, I'm going to be here 1 year and then back to Los Angeles." No, he's going to stay. He's going to stay. And they're going to transition. I think Juan Soto will get. I guess you could say. I don't want to necessarily even say used to what it's like to be a St. Louisan, but he's going to embrace it if he gets traded.
And we saw at the home run derby too. I guess Pujols and Soto already have a relationship.
Yeah,
because you saw. Obviously it was Soto that knocked Pujols out of the home run derby, but we saw those two kind of embrace and how they were kind of just joking around with each other, and that makes me wonder too. Like I have to think we know this is Albert's last year, we know this is Yachty's last year. A lot of us have assumed that it's Wainwright's last year. That the Cardinals in the front office would want to do something special to send those guys off on a winner. I'm not saying that trading for Juan Soto wins you a World Series because, unfortunately, Juan Soto can't pitch. If you need somebody that can hit the ball out of the park.
Well, neither could Albert, but they still put him on the mound.
I'm calling the Angels and being like, hey, is Shohei Ohtani available? But, all jokes aside, does it matter if you trade for Soto if you can't pitch?
It's interesting you brought up the Angels in this because there ain't no way in hell they're ever going to get Ohtani. No way.
I think I call on Noah Syndergaard.
That's who I was about to bring up. Noah Syndergaard. There's two pitchers that I think actually have a good shot of being traded to the Cardinals. And people will say I'm crazy. It's fine. I'm crazy anyway. But the two pitchers I think have a shot. Number one, he's only 29 years old, and that's Noah Syndergaard. And I think he's somebody who could use a career resurgence with the Cardinals.
I agree with that.
I think it's a perfect chance for him. Second, and this is where I think people are going to think I am batshit crazy, Madison Bumgarner.
You're not the only one I've heard bring up Madison Bumgarner's name.
I think Bumgarner could.
Here's my problem with Mad Bum, his contract. The fact that I think he's owed like $20 million next year as well. This year's already prorated because you're already past the All-Star break. Mad Bum wouldn't surprise me. The problem is he's worse than Patrick Corbin is this year. So if I was looking at the Arizona Diamondbacks, I'll give you another pitcher's name. I would look at somebody. He's right-handed. He's those mid 90s, got a really nice breaking ball, and that's Merrill Kelly. That's who I might look at rotation wise if I'm looking at Arizona. Mad Bum I think has a no trade clause. Man, you want to talk about one of like the all-time boneheaded contracts. When Arizona traded or when Arizona signed Madison Bumgarner, I'm like, okay, so let's see where this is going to go. And unfortunately, he is just he's not fared well out in the desert.
Yeah. And then there's a couple other pitchers that there's two on the A's, on the Oakland Athletics. Everybody's talking about Frankie Montez. But I also I think because he's honestly not had that great of a year either. You had mentioned it perfectly earlier that none of the pitchers that have been talked about that are available have really had really good years.
Yeah.
I think another person, though, that you should consider maybe if I'm the Cardinals is Paul Blackburn.
That's who I was going to mention.
Paul Blackburn's another one out there. And, he's not one that, of course, it's hard to get noticed when your average attendance at a home game is about, 5,000.
And you play at Minnesota every night.
Yeah, exactly. But he's 6-6 this year, a 4.35 ERA. But what I like about him is also he's 28 years old. So, as far as pitching goes, a lot of these guys are still young. Mad Bum, I'll be honest, Mad Bum is younger than I thought he was. Mad Bum's only 32. I swear I thought he was like 35, 36. That's not a knock on him. I just, I feel like he's been pitching for so long. And then here's a pitcher that I don't think they'll give up, but honestly, it'd be interesting to see in Jordan Lyles of the Orioles. And the reason I say I don't see them giving up is because, honestly, the Orioles have been on such a roll lately.
They're 3.5 games out of the final wild card spot in the American League.
Yeah. And you had already mentioned Pablo Lopez. Now, here's one that we talked about him earlier, and people may think it'd be crazy to do, but like I said, a lot of times for pitchers, it just takes a new city, a new scene, a new team. What about Brad Keller? Yeah, it's 5-10, but at the same time, one thing I've learned when it comes to pitching or watching, ball games with pitching, you have to evaluate if it's all truly on the pitcher.
Yeah.
Think about all the times pitchers, for crying out, in baseball, we've had it happen where a pitcher lost no hitters, that's happened. And that tells you because the other team just can't hit.
Look, the Reds no hit the Pirates earlier this year and lost. Let's not forget that, okay?
Exactly. So honestly, there's a lot of options out there, and none of them we're not asking, hey, go out there and get Syndergaard and have him pitch for 10 years with the Cardinals. We are not saying that. We're looking for, honestly, a median solution. Get a few years in, maybe even just a couple. I don't like the idea of trading for Patrick Corbin strictly because of the contract. Yeah. I'm just going to say, yes, he struggled this year, but for me, it is more of a contract issue. That's one of the worst contracts in baseball.
I agree.
At the moment. And why do you think the Nationals are constantly throwing his name in there? It's just it's kind of like if you watch
it's kind of like the Blues, like every time they talk about trading somebody, they want you to take Marco Scandella's contract too.
Exactly. It's just those little things. It's like you and I had we had a handshake deal on something. Okay. And right as we're about to shake hands, you or I throw something in there at the last second. Right. That's what it's like with the Nationals trying to trade Juan Soto and include Patrick Corbin. Because nobody's calling Washington saying, hey, can we have Patrick Corbin? We'll give you these guys. No, nobody wants him because of the contract. But they want Juan Soto. I think what's going to happen, though, is it's going to be like, look, you want Soto, fine, but you're going to have to give us a lot, and you're going to have to take Corbin.
Right.
Because we're the worst team in baseball. We've lost over 60, nearly 70 games right now, and we're not even at August yet. We're almost. And probably going to lose 100 games this year.
Yeah.
So, look, if we're going out on our terms. Give us some good players. Here's Patrick Corbin's shit contract. That's where you're basically at right now in the eyes of the Washington Nationals and teams like the Cardinals, teams like the Padres who have also shown interest, so at the end of the day, we've asked
it's no different than the Mookie Betts deal when they sent Mookie Betts and David Price to LA. You got Mookie Betts, you got your superstar, but you had to take his contract as well.
Yeah, and David Price, it was just the pun writes itself when it comes to that. But which is interesting because the Cardinals are the same team that offered about 150, 200 million to get David Price back in 2011, I believe. Long time ago, they were offered to try to get David Price, and it didn't work. So we'll see. We're going to obviously keep you posted on all our socials about how the developments with Juan Soto, where he goes, what happens. And even if Juan Soto doesn't go to the Cardinals, what the Cardinals are going to do, what they should do, and if they do anything. That's the biggest thing I'm worried about. It's not so much. Here's a question for you, James. What would you be more afraid of if you are a Cardinals fan? Well, I know you are, but if you're in the perspective of a Cardinals fan, what worries you more? The Cardinals make a wrong move, or the Cardinals don't make any moves?
Well, the Cardinals not making any moves, and here's why. We saw that last year that made the playoffs, even though they got beat in a one-game playoff by the Dodgers. You added a wild card this year. Right now, if the playoffs started today, the Cardinals would be in the playoffs. Hard to believe considering of how bad they've played since the All-Star break. So my biggest fear is that they don't do anything at all. And I think Mo and DeWitt and I think Gersh and them, they just kind of look back and they say, well, we've got a team that's capable of winning. But, and I caveat by saying this is what the normal person, normal fan would think. Now that Steven Matz is down, that pushes their hand. We've got to go out and get at least one pitcher. I think you need 2 starters. And don't ask me where you're going to get them from. We've already named a list of prospective pitchers. I think Castillo and Quintana. Quintana pitches for the Pirates, Castillo for the Reds. I would love to have both of them. It's not going to happen, especially with Castillo. They're in division. Same thing with like a Tyler Mahle from Cincinnati. That's not going to happen either. But I'm afraid that the Cardinals front office feels like, well, once we get Bader back and once we get this person back, but look, there's certainly, looking at the pitching staff side of things, Flaherty, the only place you've seen him is on the back of a damn milk carton. So I don't know what he's missing. I don't think he pitches this year. Steven Matz is most likely done now. So you've got
Alex Reyes doesn't exist anymore.
No doubt. Michaelis, Wainwright are your only 2 dependables. Let's just keep throwing them out there and run them into the ground. Liberatore, when he was up and down. Zach Thompson is okay, but you can't keep going with Andre Palante. That's not going to work either. Now
he'll get run down.
Yeah, and Palante was better in the bullpen. So look, and I swear to God, if they do the J.A. Happ experiment crap this year, I'm going to blow a fuse because it's the same thing. Like I said earlier, it's the same thing over and over and over again. And we both know that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is purely the definition of insanity. Quit going out and getting this low-hanging fruit. Go out and get somebody who can pitch for you, can provide innings, who can help you win ball games, keep you in games, and give you quality starts and give you innings to where you're not blowing out your bullpen, and try to win more than just trying to get into the playoffs. Actually try to get somewhere into the playoffs.
And that's the thing. And, it's interesting because I actually liked the whole J.A. Happ experiment. I liked because I felt it worked. I felt having Lester, if it weren't for having guys like Lester, and
we won't make the playoffs last year. Yeah,
we don't make the playoffs if it was not for J.A. Happ and John Lester. And that's not so much a knock on some of the other guys. It's just more of a knock on just the situation. Injuries riddled everybody last year. The Cardinals were a hurting team, and the injuries have continued to pile up into this year. So having those guys was crucial. But this is where your point comes in. They're both retired. We can't just keep calling guys up on the last year of their careers.
Yep.
And, like you said, what the definition of insanity is. And Nolan Arenado said it best a couple weeks ago. It's not about just making it to the playoffs. We're trying to go to the World Series. We're trying to go far. Arenado didn't get traded to the Cardinals and then say, hey, you know what? I cannot wait to play the Dodgers in the play-in game.
And get knocked out, yeah.
By Alex Reyes, who hasn't been seen since. That's the thing.
Flaherty are on the back of both of those milk cartons. You see their pictures hanging up inside train stations.
Flaherty is on the milk carton. Alex Reyes is on the plane with Amelia Earhart. Just straight disappeared. Just straight disappeared. And I'll find Jimmy Hoffa beforehand, probably. That's what it's starting to look like. And that's what worries, and that does what worries me because there's another pitcher that and then here's another one that's not even in the organization anymore, Marco Gonzalez. It was sad when he was traded to Seattle. So the Cardinals just have this issue where if your name isn't Adam Wainwright, and for the past few years, Miles Michaelis, you're not consistent in that rotation.
Yep.
If it wasn't for the injuries, when Flaherty's not hurt, he's dependable in my opinion. But when he's hurt, that's the key because he's been hurt a lot. And
yeah.
And the setbacks are what's making it worse. Bader's setback in center field, is what's making it worse, because he's an all-star outfielder, in my eyes. So the Cardinals have a big injury bug that they need to kill. They need to find a way to get over this injury bug. Or honestly, I'm just going to say it. Do you want to see a half-injured team in a play-in game?
No.
Do you honestly like, especially, and I this is my thing. I did not like the add of a third wildcard team because say the Cardinals get the third wildcard spot. I'm just like, did they though? Did they? I feel like you're just adding spots now and saying, hey.
It gives the front office an excuse not to do anything. Well, we made the playoffs.
Yeah, Mozeliak's going to be like, hey, I don't know what you guys are talking about. We made the playoffs last year. We're a consistent perennial playoff team. Yeah, but you don't do shit when you get there.
Oh, I'm sorry. You kissed the ugliest of the pretty sisters. I see how it is. I mean, come on. Give me a break. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think you just – at this point in time, it's like adding participation trophies. Ugh.
Right. And it's something that at the major league level, of any sport, you cannot be doing. I understand two wildcard spots. I get that. You want to have the play-in, fine. If anything, MLB's doing it for the money. They're doing it for the money of the ratings.
They're doing it. It's the only reason they're doing it.
Right. That's what it's for. They want to say, like, let's get some more money out of this. We're going to do this. So fine. I get that. It's business. But a third one, really, there is no reason. And that's on a whole nother tangent we'll end up talking about. But I just feel like Mozeliak, if the Cardinals make the playoffs this year, but are the same team we're currently watching and listening to, we're screwed in 2023.
Guaranteed. Because
Mo just has it in his ear, like, hey, if we make the playoffs, nothing else matters. We don't have to do anything. We're good. The only thing he's going to have to figure out is who to put at catcher next year, Kinsler or Herrera. That's all he's got to figure out.
I'm not sold on either one of them.
Yeah,
That's a whole other time.
That's a discussion for next week. But you know who? Because it is time for our final big story of the evening. And I tell you, they don't sponsor us, but I will say this. Ice Mountain does a hell of a job keeping me refreshed through this show. I will tell you, if they did sponsor us, advertise with us, the guys to go to. Anyway, exactly. Could be me, could be you, could be Adam. Let's go for it. Well, folks, I'm showing up the shirt once more because Cacaw is still the law, baby. The XFL has returned on this past Sunday. Dana Garcia and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, there was a town hall meeting in Texas where they had the announcement of the return of the XFL's teams, which cities will have the teams, who the coaches are, and I'm not going to lie, it is a solid freaking group of coaches.
You're not kidding.
I am, oh my gosh. I was actually a little jealous of some of these coaches that were on other teams, but I'm so happy about Anthony Beck being the St. Louis XFL team's coach. Because technically, all right, let me get it out there. They have not officially announced the names. So we don't know if they are the Battlehawks again, but I mean, why the hell wouldn't they be? Like, it has to be the Battlehawks.
Right.
But anyway, I don't know what's more exciting for me. The fact of the 8 cities that have a team, or the fact of the 3 cities that don't. More specifically, the 2 that don't.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Even not as much New York, just LA. Screw them. All right. So here we go. Here are the list of the cities that will be having an XFL team in 2023. Arlington, Texas. Houston, Texas. Orlando, Florida. Las Vegas. San Antonio, Texas, Seattle, Washington, the good old St. Louis, Missouri, baby, and Washington, D.C. Now, here's some of the coaches. We got some Hall of Famers. We got some future Hall of Famers.
No doubt.
We got some Super Bowl winning players right here. You got Coach Wade Phillips, who's coaching Houston. I mean, look, big fan of his father, the late great Bum Phillips. Love you, Blue. I love it. So, and Wade Phillips is one of the great defensive minds. So Wade Phillips is a perfect choice to have. Rod Woodson for Las Vegas. My mind was absolutely blown when I heard Rod Woodson was one of the coaches.
Yeah, it kind of surprised me too.
Then you got Hines Ward, which, okay, I'm just going to say for San Antonio. Now, let me just say it. Pittsburgh's my least favorite. Them and New England are my least favorite football teams. You know, as a Cleveland Browns fan, you know, like screw the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, but still, I cannot deny the amount of talent that Hines Ward possesses. Like, just unbelievable Hall of Fame talent. Then we got a guy who I think who gets too much crap, in my opinion, Jim Haslett. Jim Haslett, really solid coach. He'll be coaching the Seattle team. You got Reggie Barlow coaching Washington's team. Terrell Buckley is going to be coaching Orlando's team. And we can't even forget Arlington's team, Bob Stoops.
Yeah.
Like, what? Didn't see that coming. And then, you know, I will say this. As far as accolades go, St. Louis's coach, Anthony Becht, has the I hate saying it like this, just the least amount. But that doesn't take away from the amount of experience this guy has. And he was a former St. Louis Ram, so he knows this city very well.
Played under Martz. Yeah.
Yep, played under Mike Martz. So, you know, I will take it. And he played on the Chiefs. He played with the Bucks, the Jets. He had 21 receiving touchdowns in his 11-year career. So, look, the average NFL career is 3 years. You make it past that, hell of a kudos to you.
Right.
So to make it 11 years is amazing. And then you got, guys like freaking Adam Vinatieri, Robbie Gould, and Tom Brady playing 20 plus years, but that's beside the point. But anyway, the New York Guardians, Tampa Bay Vipers, and Los Angeles Wildcats are not coming back. And the smile on my face is almost screen to screen. I mean, I am so happy. But on a truly business perspective, you had brought it up to me, and I believe we either mentioned this pre-show or during the beginning of the show, that it was the smart decision not to bring them back for no other reason except attendance-wise, they were among the lowest. In fact, Los Angeles had the lowest attendance for the XFL when they were first around.
And I think what you do is you look at cities like New York and Los Angeles and even in Tampa. I mean, there are so many other things to do than going to a football game, especially one that, and this is not to take away from the XFL by any means, but you're not talking about the NFL here. You're not even talking about college football in a sense. You're talking about the XFL. And when they were playing games in next year's season will start in February of 2023, February, March, and I'm guessing into April, similar to the last XFL season that was halted by the pandemic, was, there are just so many things to do in those cities that time of year, whether it's, obviously LA, you're looking at warmer weather, same thing with Tampa. So you're getting outside, you're doing more than just going to a football game. And in New York, I mean, obviously the Rangers, the, Islanders, you're talking about hockey season.
2 to 3 pro teams per sport, literally.
Right. So there's so many other things to do. And then if you throw it for New York, chuck in Broadway and everything else that musicals and stuff like that takes away the normal football fan. And then in LA, of course, you've got the palm trees and, just so much to do out there as well. So, I think it's good that you get away from the bigger city markets. I would like to see some of these XFL teams, and I'm sure they'll expand if this is successful, go to some of these bigger college cities. Going to a place like Tuscaloosa, in Alabama, or go to Gainesville, Florida, go to Louisville, Kentucky, go to,
I would love to went to Louisville.
Right. I mean,
that would be fun.
Or even like a Columbus, Ohio, where you start to get into these big time, just hardcore football markets because of their college teams, and you're just feeding them football pretty much year round. I think that would behoove the XFL to become more successful just on that business model level there.
I would even throw a couple other markets out there. One, I would say out in the Denver, Colorado market.
Yeah.
One of the fastest growing cities in the country. And
or even like a place like Colorado Springs where you would have,
even Colorado Springs. Yeah.
Right.
Colorado Springs is a great opportunity. You want to get that way. See, if you're in the perspective of Seattle right now, you're living the dream because look, you got the whole Northwest market all to yourself with this.
Right.
You get Oregon, you get Idaho, Montana, you get Colorado, all them. And Vegas, if you're in Las Vegas, you're happy because look, California's gonna, for the ones that do want to watch it, they're gonna have to watch, Vegas because that's the closest one for them.
Right.
Texas is going to be interesting to see how that goes. I don't mind that they have 3 teams though. That's the interesting thing. I don't really mind that they have 3. But yeah, there's so many other places that honestly it'd be cool to see a team in the Carolinas. Get one out there. There's a lot. But I think it's great that they're starting off with 8 teams. And most importantly, I am glad they are bringing back the St. Louis XFL team.
Right. I am too.
Which I'm pretty sure is going to be the Battlehawks. And I think it's great because they had the highest attendance. They had definitely the biggest fan base.
I would agree, yeah.
I mean, before the pandemic happened,
they were getting ready to open up the upper level too for that.
Right, that's what I was going to say. It was going to be the Los Angeles Vipers and the St. Louis Battlehawks.
Yep.
And the Los Angeles Wildcats. But anyway, see, that's how little I care about the Los Angeles XFL team.
By the way, my Rams are still Super Bowl champions. You just remember that.
What's that? Yeah.
I said you just remember my Rams are Super Bowl champions. You still remember that.
Well, guess what? My old Rams were Super Bowl champions too. And guess what? My old St. Louis Rams could kick your Los Angeles Rams' ass any day.
I don't know. Defensively, we're getting there.
Very true.
Hang on. Just real quick.
Isaac Bruce for Jalen Ramsey.
Could you imagine if this team that just won, or you could even go with this team because they added Allen Robinson and Bobby Wagner and stuff. If that team played the 99 Rams, could you imagine how many points would be scored? It'd be like playing Madden on rookie, man.
Oh my gosh! Yes,
by the way, that game comes out in 3 weeks. I'm really ready for that.
I'm excited for that.
Yes, sir.
That is going to be great. And nonetheless, about the Los Angeles Wildcats versus the St. Louis Battlehawks. Right before the pandemic hit, they were going to face at the Dome at America Center in St. Louis, and St. Louis had already had the highest attendance for both weeks, or at least among the top 3 attendance for both weeks. And, everybody was tuning in on TV and everything. It was crazy. But it was just still the lower bowl section. Right. So you could only get about 20 to 30,000 fans. Well, they announced before the game, they were going to open that upper bowl. James, if it were not for that pandemic, we would have had a 60,000 plus XFL game.
I know.
And watch St. Louis kick some ass. And it would have been the greatest thing. I'm telling you. So, and there's just this, look, Alistair Fennell, who we're going to have on next week, wrote an article just a couple days ago about how St. Louis is a football city. Obviously, it's not the number one, but nobody's claimed it is. And if they have, they've never watched a baseball game. But St. Louis is a sports city. St. Louis, has such a loyal hockey fan base. Its baseball fan base is second to none. But you cannot overlook the football fan base. The reason they weren't able to keep a football team was because of reasons outside of the fans' control.
Solely on the owners. It had nothing to do with the fans or the fans. Look, I harken back to when the Rams were in St. Louis, and for those that want to say, oh, they never filled the dome, and that's just not true. Now, were there a lot of teams when they were playing, in 2015 and 2014, those last couple of years before they moved, were there a lot of teams that traveled in, like Packers fans, obviously travel well, Steelers fans travel well, but those hardcore Rams fans that were there, just because you weren't putting 66,000 people in that dome does not mean that the fan base that wasn't there wasn't filling the dome, because we went to those games. Like my last game at the Dome was a 24-7 beating of the San Francisco 49ers. And, there was at least 40,000 people there. And don't sit there and tell me that, well, St. Louis isn't a football city or they can't support a football team. It was never like that. And I've gone, and I will die. That's a hill I have no problem dying on, when it comes to talking about St. Louis as a football city, and those that say, well, they lost 2 teams. Well, okay. Kroenke, as soon as Georgia Frontiere and her health declined, look, Kroenke was moving that team. There was not a damn thing the city could do about it. I don't care, what was done rendering wise, stadium wise, that was over. You go back to the St. Louis football Cardinals leaving. Look, that was a stadium issue. Bidwell didn't want to leave St. Louis. He didn't get what he wanted, and ultimately he left. Again, that has nothing that's not a knock on the people. It's not a knock on the fan base. And we saw with the XFL, and I'll tell you, I was extremely surprised how well the fan base supported this team, just because you wondered how they would support a, I guess, quote unquote, second tier football league that ended up being, must-see TV on many Saturdays and Sundays. So, I think it stinks about the pandemic, because I had planned on coming up to see a game, and then all of a sudden, COVID makes rears its ugly head, and before you know it, everything's shut down. And, it's just one of those things that, Vince McMahon got it right the second time. Now let's see how The Rock and how Danny Garcia, how they make this future their reality. So it'll be really interesting. I think that they will do a fantastic job with it. I think both, if you go back to the wrestling part of things, when Dwayne Johnson brought out the Brahma Bull, of course, if you know anything about Danny Garcia, at the time they were together and she was working at Merrill Lynch. That's kind of where the bull came from. And obviously she's got a really keen business eye and a knack for it. And of course, then it's The Rock. And of course, he has branched off so much from wrestling and from movies and to his tequila, which, by the way, is not a plug, but it's wonderful. Don't underage drink, kids. That's bad. But
drink responsibly, please.
There you go. But I mean, just so much of being not only a personality out in front of everything, but I mean, he even at the Super Bowl in LA, of course, who was there? It was The Rock, and it was The Rock starting things off and getting things going, and he's always been in the public eye, and I think that certainly he will be able to I think they'll make this a success. I really do.
I think so as well. And I love when people, we all know how Kroenke is. We knew as soon as Georgia Frontier's health declined and then she passed, like you said, they were going to move. No doubt about it. It's always interesting, though, when you talk about the football Cardinals, when you talk about the Big Red, because it's true. Bill Bidwell loved St. Louis. Yeah. He didn't want to leave. And he even it was interesting when when that thought comes back to me, I'll say it. But anyway, about Bidwell, it was just he wanted the stadium out in Maryland Heights. And kind of where
and the other key to that, at that time, not only did he want the stadium out in Maryland Heights, but he also had the dreams and the reality of trying to bring the San Antonio Spurs with him to St. Louis to help fill that stadium. So it was really weird. I trying to remember where I heard this at. This may have been Tim McKernan telling the story of, obviously McKernan's a St. Louis sports personality. And I think he was telling this on his show about how at that point in time that Bidwell had the idea of bringing the Spurs and bringing the NBA to St. Louis at the same time as they were going to build that new stadium.
Which is kind of interesting because at one point the St. Louis baseball Cardinals almost ended up moving to San Antonio way back in the 50s. So it's kind of funny how that works. But no, right. I remember the Bidwell family actually voted, and this was years after the Cardinals had moved to Phoenix, but they had voted to get a new expansion team for St. Louis.
Yep.
And there's also rumors where because there was only 2 owners that voted against the Rams moving, and because they've wanted to keep it anonymous for obvious reasons.
Yep.
And some of the potentially leaked names included Mike Brown, the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals, former Panthers owner Jerry Richardson, but another one was the Bidwell family. People believe that it's been leaked that the Bidwell family had voted against the Rams moving, and it was kind of a last, type of gift to St. Louis, if you will, where it's like, look, we'll do what we can, even though we knew it was futile. You knew that the Rams were going to move. But the XFL. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think the reason the XFL has been so successful in St. Louis, and I think it will continue to be successful in St. Louis, is because that team is St. Louis born. Because that's where its ties are, that's where its stakes are, and that's where it will put down its roots. And I believe that's why the XFL will continue to be successful in St. Louis.
Yes, I believe so as well, because I'm telling you, the amount of just the fandom out there. I remember doing live streams of tailgating. I mean, it was a freaking party outside of that stadium.
Right.
And, even if you were parked way away closer to like the riverfront or something, you got Battlehawks fans, you got the grill. I mean, it was just unbelievable. So yes, the XFL to me is going to be a big success yet again when it restarts. And I think it was smart for them to take extra time off. Obviously, it had to shut down for the pandemic. It could have come back this year, but they chose to take it more time, really get everything right, get the ship moving in the right direction. And that's where I think they're at. And that's why I think, and you hear it all the time around St. Louis, people are hoping the XFL comes back. And now that they've officially announced that a team is coming back to St. Louis, I mean, it's exciting. I cannot tell. I mean, that's why I got season tickets. I didn't get season tickets if I wasn't excited. So, all my friends and I, we got a bunch of them. We're ready. I would say ready to roll, but we're ready to soar.
There you go.
So we'll see how everything plays out, and obviously we'll keep you all tuning in, posted on that when the logo designs and the uniforms and everything come out, because like we said, nothing's official yet on if they're going to be the Battlehawks again, but I would be so surprised if they're not. So we'll see how that goes. Well, James, any final thoughts on anything you got?
Yeah, final from Toronto, the Cardinals knock off the Blue Jays 6-1.
That is one amazing final thought. I'll take it. I would gladly take it. I believe that's their 52nd win of the season and a much needed one.
No doubt. Needed to keep pace with Milwaukee, because they blew out Minnesota today. So you needed to keep pace, and you were able to do so.
I was going to say, you cannot. It's a 2-team race, and you cannot afford to lose. Because the National League is unbelievable. If anything, one quick side note before we close today, if anything about the National League that's true, is that there's a lot more depth in the quality of the teams.
You are not wrong. You are.
It's not just the division leaders and then a bunch of trash teams. No, there is at least 8 teams to 9 teams in the National League that are in contention for a playoff spot.
Right. You got five or six teams that are vying for 3 wild card spots. And I think that's how it'll be all the way. That's why it'll be real interesting when we get together next week to see what trades have been made and what big names are moving places.
Absolutely. Because remember, folks, August 2nd is the trade deadline. We will be back after the trade deadline. As of now, next Wednesday, obviously Showtime is subject to change, but we'll keep you posted, of course, with that. Alistair Fennell, one of our amazing team members and a football historian and aficionado, will be joining us. And I know we've wanted to have him on for a while, and he's been wanting to be on for a while, but we're looking forward to that. Other guys, including Andy Cockerell of Cardinals Off the Cuff, is going to be on in a future episode. We're looking forward to that. And, so be sure to follow us. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, our official YouTube channel, whether it be with Roundabout Sports, Interstate 70 Sports Media. James, you know where to find James on his Facebook. And, of course, I'm all over.
I don't know where to find James half the damn time. How does everybody else know where to find me?
Well, okay, you in person on one of the highways traveling to a different state to umpire a tournament. That's where you're at. And then me, you can just find me at work.
I live in a state of confusion. I'm sorry.
I live in the fifth dimension. That's where I'm at. Well, as always, though, folks, before we say goodnight, we also have to mention, as always, I put at the bottom of the screen, it's the mental health and the suicide awareness hotline. If they've combined it into one, actually, that's the mental health hotline. You can call it the NAMI hotline at 1-800-950-NAMI. And then also for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, they have changed it. It originally was a much longer number, but now all you have to do is just dial 988. It's the Suicide and Crisis Hotline or Lifeline. You just have to dial 988. Understand that you are never alone. There's always somebody out there that loves you and cares about you. And you're not wrong for needing to talk to somebody or feeling like you need help. No doubt. Always remember that. Everybody struggles. Everybody goes through their trials and tribulations, but just understand that you are loved and you're not alone. So one more time for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, just dial 988. And it's open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. So with that, folks, thank you so much for tuning in this evening to Roundabout Sports. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm the Maestro Jeremy Karp. That's Hollywood James Knox. And remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. Good night and God bless.